All right, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back to the Coach's Quarters. A giant shout out to all of my followers who have followed me into this second season of this show. We are finally back. It was a delayed opening, but we are here just to catch up on a couple of things going on in my life, right? My best friend passed away. She was my little dog. If you listened to all the shows in the first season, you probably heard her barking in the background. That was kind of part of the reason that it took me so long to launch. It's a little weird sitting in this chair without her beneath my feet. But, moment of silence for Rizzo. And let's get rolling. I know some of you, especially those tied to me in my personal life, know that I was blessed with a little bit of a cool opportunity for the pod. And now it's looking like most, or all Sundays moving forward, I will be working downtown at the ESPN office for ESPN 95.7, doing a segment with the Mean Gene Show, the man who got me on the pod platform in the first place. It seems that he is dragging me to the newer highs that I did not know existed. So we do have a little shtick going on Sundays. I will be trying to post all of those with my show. To be completely transparent with you all, I have no idea what I'm doing with that. So I am working out the kinks on that, trying to figure out, kind of where I can go with that. But apart from that, outside of the intros and, all of the nitty-gritty information about, our shows and who we are and just kind of playful banter between me and Gene and I, just as a recap for that show, because I'm hoping that it will have been posted to all of the platforms prior to this show launching. But if you watch that show, you see that we went over the AFC East and the AFC West. So for my first show back in season 2, I am very grateful that I was able to land a new guest, somebody that has not been on the show before. I'm super excited to kind of break things down with him. He lives out yonder in Yankee Land. He is a beat writer for the New England Patriots, so I figured it would be a fitting tie-in to have an interview with him. I'm going to sit down, have him call in, and we're going to, go over the Patriot stuff and kind of what he feels the direction of the Patriots under Gerard Mayo looks like, and, whether the general consensus in Patriot land is that things are looking good or looking bad, and kind of a perspective why from there. All right, everybody. And for a moment that I'm super excited for, we did not have a lot of exterior interviews in season 1. I was trying to get my legs out from underneath me, trying to get a feel for how a solo show would operate. Despite the Mean Gene Show being an interview show, despite me being a part of that, I got to talk to John Lynch and a lot of other people that were super cool. The interviews were all really interesting, and I got to do that. It's a lot more difficult to incorporate that into a solo show, especially when I don't have the connections that Mean Gene has. Right, so this was cool. I met this guy through my personal collection of sports memorabilia. As some of you may know, I do have a quote-unquote PC, right? I have a whole Instagram page for it. I collect game-worn jerseys, game-worn football cards, things like that. I've got cleats and gloves, and the 9, that's what I use to decorate the studio here. Big fan. It's a super cool hobby to me. I'm very interested in it. And I did meet this guy accidentally through the PC page. And it turns out he is a New England Patriots beat writer, lives in Massachusetts. He is one of them, right? He's lived a large portion of his life on top of the world in terms of football. This guy has no idea what it's like. No, he has no idea what it's like to suck, what it's like to lose all of the time, what it's like for players to not want to come to your team. All he knows is the Belichick way. And I'm super stoked to have him on the show. He's been nothing but a cool guy to me since we met. We were supposed to do a show last season. It didn't work out because of time constraints. I am super excited to bring him to you guys. Everybody, please put your hands together for Mr. Zac Ventola.
Wow, thank you. This is amazing.
It dies out. That lasts forever. Sorry about that. But all right, dude, what is up? What is it like to be a Patriots fan right now? You're a beat writer for the New England Patriots. Y'all have seen nothing but success for a long, long time. Things are a little different now with Belichick out and Brady gone. So my first real question for you here, right, just to jump right into Patriots stuff.
Yep.
is how do you feel about Gerard Mayo, right? He steps in as the head coach with the departure of Belichick. How, in your perspective of what is going on, how do you feel about the direction that Gerard Mayo is taking the team and the way that he has handled, some of the things that have come up since the offseason began?
I've been liking it so far. It's absolutely a change of pace. I mean, you go from over 20 years of Belichick, just straight X's and O's, had a personality behind the scenes from what players would say, but never really got to see it as a fan or at the media. So going from Mayo, it's just a completely different vibe, but it's not in a bad way. Coaches, have success as that Belichick X's and O's type of guy, and coaches have success as more of a player's coach. It's still early on for Mayo. He hasn't had a single regular season game, so for all I know, he could be the next greatest coach, or he could be fired within a year or two. But I am pretty optimistic. I think that he has looked good so far in what he's done. I haven't loved the way he's handled the QB competition, to be honest. And really just his rookies in general. It feels like they haven't been getting the playing time with the starters that they maybe should be getting. But besides that, I think that it has been a relatively successful first few months for the Mayo regime.
Okay, sick. I like that. Okay, so with the quarterback situation, because that is not, the quarterbacks weren't even within the framework of what I was going to ask you about today. So with the quarterbacks not getting the time with the starters, are you more talking about like wanting to get Joe Milton mixed in with the ones a little bit, or is it more of you think Jacoby Brissett and Drake May should be taking equal snaps with the starters and both should be really feeling out the offense to see who's going to get a fair crack as the starter? What do you mean?
The latter. May got his first real snaps with starters this week, and it's been still very limited. He has gotten a very minuscule amount of reps with the starting offensive line and the starting receivers. I don't necessarily know that it should be an exact even 50-50. Brissett came in with the expectation of him being the starter, and I don't think that job should just get thrown away that quickly. But May has shown in these past couple of weeks, probably week or two, that he can make a push for that starting job, even after he started out a little bit slow in training camp. I just don't see the reason to call it a quarterback competition, which is what they have been doing, but not give Drake May the reps that really he does deserve with that starting offense.
I like that. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. They did draft May real high. They did have high expectations for him to have that role and to treat him unfairly is the wrong word for it, but to treat him unfairly in the situation's unfair, right? Like he should be getting reps. If they honestly want to look at him as a starter, he should be getting reps at the one so that they actually know whether he's starter material or not.
Yeah, and he was expected to be a developmental guy. If he came into camp and he was just completely stinking it up, then sure, keep him with the second team. But he has looked good in these past couple of weeks and in the preseason when he's gotten in. So I think that he still does deserve more reps than he had been getting.
I can see that. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. Okay, so with that being said, with the quarterbacks, right outside of that, you have Ramondre Stevenson, who was re-upped in the offseason. He was the lead back last season. How do you feel, so to kind of conjoin two of these two things I wanted to bring up, the Pats were willing to sell the farm for Brandon Ayuk, right? They paid Ramondre Stevenson in the offseason. So Gerard Mayo has definitely noticed that the wide receiver room is lacking, to put it lightly, right? And they re-upped on their lead back. Do you like Ramondre Stevenson's fit in this offense so far through camp and the preseason games? And do you think that your wide receiver room will develop as the year goes on, or do you think you guys will be buyers in the wide receivers market all the way up until the deadline? Do you think what you have on the team is going to be what's carried over, or do you think there will be an acquisition of some sort before the deadline?
So that's tough because I would say that the answer to all of those questions is yes. I do have confidence in Ramondre Stevenson. Again, he obviously got that massive contract, even seen as potentially a little bit of an overpay because it was a very big deal, especially in a running back market right now that is pretty bare.
Mm-hmm.
But he has looked good. I was really impressed with his most recent preseason game. Obviously, again, it is the preseason. He's a bona fide starter and going up against backups. But while he didn't have any particularly standout plays in that game, every single time he was getting hit and getting 2 or 3 extra yards after contact, which that jumped out to me. And then to go on to that, the questions about the receivers, I do think that this wide receiver room that they currently have has some potential. We saw Demario Douglas last year, 6th-round pick out of Liberty, and I don't want to say he lights it up, but he was their best receiver in the latter half of the season after Kendrick Bourne went down. He is showing potential to really be a playmaker for them. And then the 2 rookies that they have, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker. Polk has been great, just a really consistent guy.
Okay.
He's always open. You'll always have him, kind of like a quarterback's best friend. And then Baker has been very boom or bust. He has been getting open. He's made a couple of just ridiculous plays. But then in that most recent preseason game, I believe he had 3 drops on Drake May's passes.
Okay.
So May went 6 for 11. 2 of those throws were throwaways, and 3 of them were drops by Javon Baker. So if he can get that fixed, be a little bit more consistent, I think he has true wide receiver 1 potential. But as you mentioned, the Patriots have been very consistently in on the wide receiver market.
Mm-hmm.
They made that push for Brandon Ayuk. As you said, they were willing to sell the farm, had an offer of something around a 2nd-round pick in Kendrick Bourne. I believe that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we're willing to pay Ayuk about $32 million a year with
much money.
Heavy guarantees. So I think that while this wide receiver room does have room to grow, why take that risk maybe when you can have that bona fide star?
I like that.
Again,
yeah.
Connecting it back to Stevenson too. Yes, you can run the ball all day, and Stevenson is a very, very good running back. But if you can get that number 1 receiver, one of those Tuesday morning guys, as they like to call them, that opens up the offense for so much more.
Absolutely. I also like that take. I for one, I didn't like New England going after Ayuk. I know he's younger, but it's a lot of money, dude. They offered him so much cash, and it would have strapped him over time.
Absolutely.
I guess nobody would know. My next question for you was, do you think that Gerard Mayo is going to be a good developer of talent? But there's no way that anybody could know the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's still so early.
So moving on from the offense, right? Kind of a general theme here, because Brandon Ayuk is a little older or a little younger for a free agent, or what would have been a trade right before the free agency period, because he's ready for a contract. Do you think that the Patriots are going to lean more towards youth over bringing in tested veterans? Do you think that this is going to be kind of a San Francisco build, right? The San Francisco built this team, and they brought in a lot of young players and just lightly spelled veterans throughout. Do you think that that might be part of the reason that Matt Judon was sold to Atlanta? Do you think that they are going to try and kind of trim some of the age off the top, get the salary cap down so that they can start rebuilding in years, 2.5 and 3, give or take?
Yeah, absolutely. Judon, again, as you said, traded, and he was not going to line up with the trajectory of this team. these next few years are going to be a rebuild, just bringing in young talent, developing as much as possible. Once that's ready, maybe they'd be willing to bring in more veteran talent. But we've seen it really throughout the offseason, and right when Mayo and Elliott Wolf took over, they released Adrian Phillips, Lawrence Guy, believe maybe a couple of players I'm blanking on, but point is veteran players who can still play in the league. They are still maybe not pro bowlers, but
Sure.
very good rotational guys. And instead of keeping them around, they cut ties and let them find new teams. So I think that Mayo understands that these next few years are all about showing potential, developing, drafting well, and then once May is ready, and let's say Polk and Baker maybe look good, that's when they're ready to really make a push and bring in some veteran guys.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. I also agree with that. Dope. Yeah, I like Matt Judon in New England. I thought he was a terrific player for y'all, but in the direction that the team is headed right now, it does make more sense to sell him high when he still has value and give him an opportunity to chase a ring while they go into a rebuild.
Absolutely.
So, final talking point, dude. Thank you so much for joining the show. I've really enjoyed this. I'm really hoping that I can get you on again. You have all the information about the Pats, and it turns out to be one of my least favorite teams to cover. So whenever you want to come back, I am more than happy to bring you back. But
I'd love to be back on.
Sick. I will send you a t-shirt just for saying that on air.
Oh, let's go.
But final question, dude. So it's not necessarily a question, more of a feeling. So for you, what is your general feeling with the Patriots? How optimistic are you? Like, I know that an undefeated season is unattainable, right? Like, nothing's impossible, but that's pretty impossible. What is your outlook on the team this year? Where do you feel you guys will settle? You know, granted, there's a lot of variables, right? Like, players can get hurt, players can not live up to what they were supposed to, and naturally that's going to diminish the team. Maybe they overachieve, you know, either or. Where do you see the Patriots settling this season?
I would say marginally better than last year.
Okay.
I think it's hard to be worse than they were last season. But the schedule this year is also much more difficult. It is a much stronger competition on their schedule this year.
Okay.
So even if they are a 4 or 5 win team, I think that they're going to be a better team than they were last year, even if they're a 3 win team. But the rookies this year, I'm hoping that they get enough playing time to really develop and show promise. And again, when looking back to last season, I mean, everything could not have been worse. You lost Matthew Judon out for the year within a couple of weeks. Christian Gonzalez out for the year within a couple of weeks. That offense was whatever could go wrong did go wrong with Mac Jones, the offensive line, the receiver room. Kendrick Bourne was out for the year. And on special teams, Chad Ryland was a mess. So while I don't know exactly how many wins they'll get, I think that the goal for this year and what they realistically will do is just look like a more competitive team than they did in 2023.
I love that. Yeah, they're just trying to shed the limbs from the Belichick era and grow into their own. It's going to be a year of development and just really getting to see who's actually going to stick around moving forward when the rebuild really begins next season under Mayo.
For sure.
Cool. All right, man. Well, that's all I've got for you. Take a bow, dude. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Have a great night.
Take it easy, brother. Bye.
See ya.
All right. Yeah, that was dope. Big thank you to Zach. Now moving on from the Patriots, we're gonna take a small detour away from divisions, mostly because I am covering those on Sundays with Mean Gene, but also because I don't want the first show back to be just super informative and kind of lose that fun edge, right? That I worked so hard in season 1 to try and obtain. So I'm going to bounce a little bit, and I want to talk about a couple of quarterback situations around the league. Just kind of dig into the ones that are maybe not looking quite as bright and shiny as the general population expected them to be. Going through the offseason, going through the end of last year where some teams may have gotten hot, some teams may have cooled down, just to look at a couple of quarterback situations that are appealing, that are interesting, right? So first on the list, I have the Minnesota Vikings, right? They take J.J. McCarthy in the first round of the draft this past season, or this past draft. McCarthy is developing. McCarthy is getting his legs under him. McCarthy starts to look better as time is going by. And then all of a sudden, after some pretty decent looks, whether it be in practice or on the preseason field, McCarthy's looking pretty decent. He then has a meniscus tear, and he is out for the season, right? So you have Sam Darnold, who was seeing ghosts a couple of years, and you have Nick Mullins. So what are the Vikings going to do? You know, they signed Stephon Gilmore to the $10 million contract, the 1 year. So they doled money out to him to shore up their secondary. Minnesota is built to be a competitive team. They look good. They're good on paper. They have the talent. But who do you start at quarterback? So it's interesting because Sam Darnold, if I'm not mistaken, was already named the starter, right? Nick Mullins is going to be good. He's going to be a good backup. But would they benefit more from potentially trying to move to a different QB? Like what would be the way for them to approach this? Because you don't want this to be a down year. You have too many people under contract that you need this not to be a down year for. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out in Minnesota. Just because Sam Darnold's locked in as QB1 now that McCarthy's out for the year. And quite frankly, I hope Sam Darnold does well. I drafted him on fantasy many years, expecting him to boom. The boom never quite came, although he never got put in a position where he was necessarily surrounded by talent, except for when he was, the few games that he got to play for the Niners. And he didn't look terrible for the Niners last season. So, hats off to Minnesota. Hopefully Sam Darnold works out if they go that path. Hopefully they get the Sam Darnold that was drafted for all of this immense talent years and years and years ago. The next team up, we have the Chargers. The Chargers they're an enigma, right? The Chargers are a little different because you have the full culture change going over to the Jim Harbaugh regime. You have Justin Herbert, who is under a massive contract, who is talent-wise probably a top 8 quarterback in the league. It's not even probably. I believe that he's a top 8 quarterback in the league with his talent level. You have him losing Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Austin Eckler. So this offense is a totally new look offense. Everything's going to be a little different. Talent level is going to be a little less. They're going to be moving to more of a run-heavy offensive scheme. So what do things look like for the Chargers? Is this something where, maybe Justin Herbert's on his way out a lot sooner than anybody would have expected should his play diminish? Are we going to see like a more efficient offense out of Justin Herbert, the Chargers, where now you don't have Keenan Allen, whom I don't think was a locker room distraction or, one of the guys that begs for more targets or anything like that. You don't have somebody whom that the fan base and everybody else associated with the NFL, that he's good. He's good. You can throw it to him, and it's a safe bet. So maybe there were days that he forced too many passes to Keenan, just hoping that Keenan and his talent level could make a play, whereas now he's going to have to distribute the ball differently. He's going to have to distribute the ball better. So maybe we see a better Justin Herbert, no Mike Allen to stretch the sides, no more Keenan underneath or anywhere else, because Keenan Allen was an incredible talent. But you also lose Austin Eckler out of the backfield, who was massive in the passing game and was a huge boom player who seemed to have a 60-plus yard touchdown every game that he started. So the Chargers' entire offense is a giant question mark, which leaves Justin Herbert, whom is the leader of the offense, with an even bigger question mark, because what are we going to see out of him? Are we going to be running tons of slants and curls, and this whole new age Chargers offense is going to turn into a Stone Age offense, and they're going to try and win that way? It's going to be interesting. This is one that I can't wait to monitor throughout the season. Honestly, it's going to be a fun one because they could be good. Jim Harbaugh took Colin Kaepernick to a Super Bowl. I don't care what anybody says. And Jim Harbaugh played quarterback in the NFL. if anybody can get the most out of Justin Herbert, it would be Jim Harbaugh. That logically that makes sense. All right, next on the docket, we have Las Vegas. This is a team that I have a pretty high opinion on this season, or at least I did going into the offseason. You have Gardner Minshew, and you have Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell is whom was with the team last season. Gardner Minshew is, as most people know at this point, a journeyman veteran at this point, and he's a stopgap quarterback, although he does have all the talent necessary to be a starter. I love Gardner Minshew. He's a jersey that I'd like to hang on my wall. But despite all of the good going into last season, the Raiders' offense has been bad. Their quarterback play has been terrible. Antonio Pierce wanted to name the starting quarterback after the second preseason game. Neither quarterback played well, so you have this thing where now you have all the internet people and what have you. They're coming up with all these crazy things where they're deciding the quarterback race based on the craziest metrics, just because neither quarterback has set themselves apart, right? Neither one of them has allowed their play to show that they could be the leader of an offense, and it sucks. I like that Zaire White's taken over as RB1. They still have Tay Adams. They still have Jacoby Myers. They can be an incredible team. They looked so good last year in spurts. Their defense was top 5. Their offense could ball. They hung that giant game on the Chargers, scored 63 points, give or take, right? So the talent was there. All they needed was to solidify the quarterback position after the Jimmy Garoppolo debacle. And it seemed like they did. Aiden O'Connell came into his own there towards the end of the season. He had some duds of games, but he was a rookie, right? You come into the second season, and it doesn't look like he's progressed any. So hopefully it's all smoke, right? Hopefully it's all smoke, and they're both incredibly talented, and they come out, and the Raiders are just blowing people out left and right? Black hole. Woo! That doesn't seem likely. It looks like it's going to be a giant learning season for the Raiders. Hopefully Antonio Pierce doesn't get canned after the first year. It would be super ironic if the Raiders did that again, which is kind of how AP ended up getting that gig in the first place, seeing as how they had already burned one of their good interim coaches in recent years. But yeah, so this quarterback situation is a bit wonky because it looks like Gardner's going to get the starting nod, or he may have by the time that this show comes out. But it looks like Gardner's going to get the starting nod. However, it doesn't look like the Raiders are going to get the same Gardner that played in Jacksonville. They're not going to get the same Gardner that played last season for the Colts. They're just, it looks like maybe he's lost a step somehow. Hopefully it's just, preseason jitters and he's not playing with the best talent on the team and they haven't opened up the playbook. And hopefully it's more of that and less of any exterior nonsense that could keep him from playing well. I'm pulling hard for the Raiders this season. I'm tired of the Chiefs winning everything in the AFC West. So I'm really cheering for the Raiders this year. So hopefully the quarterback situation shakes itself out in a meaningful way and in a way that, doesn't require the team to suck. That would be worst case scenario. So moving on to the final quarterback on this, or the final quarterback room on this list. It's the Chicago Bears. I know we shouted them out on the Mean Gene show. But I just want to talk about how good Caleb Williams has looked. I have been a Caleb Williams hater for a while now. I did not think that he would translate to the NFL. It was mostly subjective, right? Like I really just didn't think that the mental part of it would stick, and it still might not. There's always that opportunity that something's going to go aloof, and you're not going to be able to mentally recover from it, right? Like a couple of bad games in a row, and it might bury him. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, and he's looked super calm and super comfortable throughout the preseason. And if you're the Chicago Bears, you're praising the holy egg right now because it's been a long time since they had a quarterback that was good. And it does look like Caleb Williams is going to be good. They gave him an offense. They gave him a Lamborghini, right? Signed him day one, gave him a Lamborghini of an offense. So he's got all the tools available to do anything. They should be able to go to a Super Bowl. You plug and play Captain Kirk on that team, and Chicago's automatically within Super Bowl contention, right? Like people are going to think that they're going to go that distance. That's just the fact of the matter. That offense is loaded. So the quarterback situation is interesting because Caleb Williams he's so polarizing, right? You're either on the left or you're on the right. You either hate him or you love him. I happen to be on the hate side. You either hate him or you love him, and both sides want both the same and very different things. Right. So it's cool that as the number 1 overall pick, he's out there. He seems to be comfortable under center, and he's learning pretty quickly on the fly, it seems like, and all that talent, that uber massive talent that he had at USC, it looks like it's translating to the Chicago offense. It'll be cool to see them against starters in the regular season. You always have to temper your expectations. However, it's always good to see something positive. Any positivity is good positivity, right? So, that Chicago could be in good hands this year. This could be the same Chicago team that we've thought we might get should any of their picks hit over the last decade. So this will be a cool situation to follow, only because the fate of the Chicago Bears kind of rests firmly in the hands of Caleb Williams at this point. Moving on, the next topic at hand for episode 1 of season 2, just some notable injuries around the league. Just kind of trying to catch up on stuff. Maybe it'll help you with your fantasy leagues, which I do. I think next show I'm going to put out a pretty significant fantasy portion. If you watched the Mean Gene show, you saw that we did our big league draft live on air. That was dope. Would not recommend it, though. It's incredibly difficult to balance doing this and also trying not to, blow up a fantasy draft that could win you money at the end of the day. I did come in first in that league last year. I made quite a hefty sum of cash off of that, and I am excited to run it back. But drafting live on air was a tricky pickle. I cannot shade over that any better. It was pretty difficult to do both of these things. So, notable injuries around the league, as read to you by Jacob Meadows. Starting off, we're going to go with Rondale Moore in Atlanta. Rondale Moore's out with an ACL. He's gone for the rest of the season. This was Rondale's first season not with the Arizona Cardinals, and it was going to be super interesting to see how he slotted in with Captain Kirk and the rest of that offense. He's a smaller receiver, but he's super shifty. He's very quick. And he's got pretty reliable hands if you can put the ball in the breadbasket. So this was going to be his first year with a consistent quarterback under center. Kyler's been dealing with injuries, and he was dealing with an inept offense, and this, that, and the other. This was going to be Rondale Moore's first go on a team where he wasn't the first option, and he was going to get open looks because nobody was queuing in on him. So that sucks. He was somebody that I had planned on targeting in fantasy prior to the injury. So that is going to hurt Atlanta's offense a little bit. Their depth at receiver is not as notable as other teams, some might say. There's not a lot of names behind the Drake London and the Kyle Pitts. Or at least not any other, there's no notable names, right? There's nobody that you're going to see. I guess they got Calvin Ridley. So they do have Calvin Ridley as well. But beyond them, there's no names that you're going to see and you're going to be like, oh, he's a game changer, right? So Rondale Moore had a niche. He fit into it well. He was a really good second/third option in a good slot. So Atlanta is going to feel that a little bit, not necessarily as much as some might think, but they are going to feel it, and he was going to be relevant in fantasy, I do believe, so that is a bummer. Punching over to the Bills. The Bills lose Matt Milano for the season. For those that may not know who Matt Milano is, he's been around for at least, probably a decade now. He's been one of the more consistent defensive contributors for the Bills for quite some time now. And that one hurt. He's a leader on the defense. Pretty sure still has a C on his chest when he actually suits up, comes out on the field. So losing Matt Milano was big, especially after all of the other defensive departures that the Bills suffered. They have a totally new secondary. Micah Hyde is gone. Jordan Poyer is gone. There's been a shakeup amongst their corners. You have Stephon Diggs exiting. So granted, Stephon Diggs not on the defense, but the Bills have absorbed a lot of people leaving. And losing one of your defensive leaders is not a good way to begin the season. So the Bills are going to hurt without Matt Milano. That Bills defense is going to suffer a little bit. I do think that it's maybe not going to be just, open floodgates all season for other teams to score. But I do not think that the Bills defense is going to be as formidable as it has been, maybe for the last 5 or 6 years. So moving on, Chicago, Kevin Byard is week to week. He's got a soft tissue injury. The only reason he even made this list is because A, Chicago just acquired him. B, he was really good in Tennessee, not very good at all in Philadelphia, but was going to immediately be an upgrade for Chicago. So it's looking like if he can't rebound from that, soft tissue injuries are tricky. As a Texans fan with Derek Stingley, I understand as well as anybody could. They are super naggy and they can get re-aggravated at any time for any reason. Most of the time it happens at a time that isn't palatable. Right, so keep an eye on Kevin Byard. That could mean big things for the Chicago secondary. I know they are really, really hoping on him to be a run thumper and to also help in coverage should he figure out how to do that again. So losing Kevin Byard might be a big deal for Chicago. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. Next up, Detroit, we have Emmanuel Mosley. He's fought his way back from season-ending injuries over the last couple years. He's had 2 seasons ended over the last 4 due to injuries. High hopes for him in Detroit on the return. They needed him in the secondary. They have young guys that can fill his role, but everybody was really hoping Emmanuel could make it back. He tore his pec in practice out indefinitely. He should miss the rest of the season. That is super unfortunate in the preseason. He is a great talent. He's a great guy, and it really sucks to see him lose another season to injury. At this point, honestly, we might be nearing the end of the Emmanuel Mosley experiment in the NFL. Which it will be sad to see him go. Again, I'm a big fan of Emmanuel Mosley, and he is very talented, and it sucks that Detroit has lost him yet again. Moving forward, Kansas City, Marquise Hollywood Brown is out. He had a sternoclavicle injury, which I had to fucking Google for you guys. And the almighty Google, that new the AI overview, or whatever Google's feeding us these days. The sternoclavicular joint is a saddle-shaped joint that connects the upper limb to the axial skeleton of the body, which in layman's terms, it's the only joint that connects the arm to the body. So that's an awful injury for a wide receiver. It is no wonder he is out indefinitely. And we all learned a new word because of it. So although terrible, it was also a positive if you look at it in the right light. On a side note, Kansas City's going to really miss Hollywood Brown. Rashid Rice had the legal troubles. And then Xavier Worthy has had his issues. So it's one of those things where Kansas City kind of needs somebody to step up. Everybody's taking a step back. And now Hollywood Brown, their new, shiny acquisition, is hurt. So that sucks for Hollywood. That sucks for Kansas City. It's kind of a plus for literally everybody else, but it does suck for them. So that is a notable injury. Another big fantasy contributor. Hollywood should have been on most people's draft board should he fall to you the 6th, 7th, 8th round. However, you can still get Rashid Rice. You still can get Xavier Worthy. You still can get any other number of players from that team, from Travis Kelce to his backup, whomever it may be week in or week out, and fill in players because Patrick likes to spread the ball around, so they're not going to be hurting for fantasy contributors. Next up, Miami. This is a fun one just because it's 2 players returning from injury. We have Jalen Phillips returning from the Achilles injury and Bradley Chubb returning from the ACL. Both of those are going to be massive contributors to Miami's defense when back. And when activated and back in full swing of things, I would expect, at least in fantasy terms, for that defense to produce more points and to be more valuable to everybody moving forward. So the Miami defense is definitely a draft and stash, at least in the beginning. I don't have a lot of faith in them early on, but once all the pieces finally come back together, I do think Miami's defense is going to be loud. Next up, the New York Jets. We have Mike Williams. Mike Williams is coming from the Chargers. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Mike Williams has been activated. He is soon to return to practice and such. Mike Williams is going to be massive. If Aaron Rodgers returns to even, 65% of Green Bay Aaron Rodgers this year following the nasty injury, the Jets are going to be good. The Jets are going to be very good. People are quick to forget that Jets defense looked good last year for, the first 15, 20 minutes of the game until the offense, who failed to sustain drive after drive after drive, allowed the defense to get worn out because the defense couldn't get off the field. Right. So Mike Williams is stepping into an offense, A, with burner Garrett Wilson on it, who is a fantastic athlete, and then B, with Breece Hall in the backfield. So you have to respect the run game. I think Mike Williams could technically have one of his best statistical seasons of his career with the Jets, assuming that his rehab goes well and he actually returns nicely. It's going to be a nice little addition for the Jets. So Mike Williams is returning. Look to him in fantasy. If you're wondering, I drafted him in my big fantasy league with Mean Gene and the Sports Folk. I do have a lot of faith in Mike Williams, and I do think that this offense is going to be very conducive to him having a good season. So praise Mike Williams. He would be a good pickup. He is returning. He is on track. Next up, Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson. He's not hurt, but it is a bummer that all of his talent is gone. It would have been super cool for Pittsburgh to get Russ on the $1 million a year, whatever it is they signed him to, and him come out and look like the Russ of old and lead them to the promised land. That is absolutely not going to happen. Russ has looked terrible. It looks like his passion for the game is gone. Either that or his body is, dematerializing right before our faces. So it does look like the Justin Fields experiment is going to be in full throw, no matter how that makes you feel. I do believe he's a better option than Russ at this point. Russ should be close to hanging it up. It doesn't look like there is a positive way for him to move forward without being just a team mentor or a quarterback's room mentor. And I don't know how many quarterbacks in quarterback rooms are actually interested in that. So that was a little haha. He was not actually injured. But moving forward, San Francisco, we have Dre Greenlaw, the linebacker, coming back to that defense. He was injured in the playoffs last year. Superb athlete. Most people know his name. He had a couple of picks there at the end of last season to cement San Francisco going to the Super Bowl. Dude's a stud. He is coming back from his Achilles injury. Look for San Francisco's defense to be just as stacked, just as loaded, and just as lethal as they have been previously. The amount of talent that they have on that defense is stupid. So Dre Greenlaw's coming back. Yippee for the 49ers. If you're a 49er fan, that's great. If you hate the 49ers, that sucks, right? So last on this list is Tennessee. We have the Tennessee Titans, and we have cornerback Caleb Farley. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury here in camp and has re-aggravated it. It's looking like he's going to miss a couple more weeks. Tennessee is under a new coaching regime, and it's not a full rebuild, but it's mostly a full rebuild. They're definitely rebuilding. Secondary has a lot of question marks in it, especially after the departure of Kevin Byard. So Caleb Farley was going to be important. He was going to be fighting for a starting cornerback position. This doesn't look great for him. All the time missed is time that could have been spent learning this defense and learning how to gel with your teammates. And there has been quite a significant amount of distractions in Caleb Farley's life since he was drafted into the NFL. So it's looking like he might be headed to a new team. I don't know if he'll actually get re-upped by Tennessee should he play out the entirety of his rookie contract due to time missed and whatnot. But this definitely doesn't bode. This definitely doesn't bode well for Caleb Farley or the Titans moving into the regular season. But all right, that concludes this little segment of the show. There's not a lot more left on the docket. I'm going to go ahead and close her out. I'm super stoked to be back for season 2. I didn't know when or if I was ever actually going to launch. I know that I had a lot of fun doing this in the first year. I had a lot of feedback the first year. I got a shit ton of views that I did not expect to get in year 1. Super excited to run it back with you all. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 1 of season 2 of the Coach's Quarters. I cannot wait to take this podcast to new heights. We are going to break the ceiling off of everything we got in season 1. And I will see you guys at least again this Sunday at ESPN 95.7. Shout out to them in Houston and shout out to Mean Gene. We are going to be bringing you sports all of the time. Just football for me, but we are going to be bringing you sports, and I am stoked for it. Thank you all. I am signing off. I'll see you again next week. I'm out.